June 15, 1945. The Pacific Ocean burns under a blood-red sunset. USS Enterprise steams hard through heavy seas, her flight deck a hive of frantic activity. Suddenly, the radar screams. A single Japanese Zero streaks out of the clouds at 400 miles an hour, engine howling, pilot locked on a suicide run straight at Big E's heart. Every gun on the ship opens up in a thunderous roar. Tracers claw the sky. The Zero rolls, dives, refuses to break. 50 yards from impact, something impossible happens. A wall of steel and fire erupts from the carrier's side. The Kamikaze disintegrates in mid-air, showering the ocean with flaming debris. The deck crew stands frozen, mouths open. Enterprise never even shudders. One American sailor just changed naval warfare forever, and most of the world still has no idea who he is. That sailor is Chief Gunner's mate Paul F. Foster from Wichita, Kansas, and this is the forgotten story of how one quiet, stubborn farm boy from the Great Plains invents the weapon that saves America's fast carriers from the deadliest threat they ever face in World War II. By early 1945, the Imperial Japanese Navy is bleeding out, but it has one last card to play: the divine wind. Over 4,000 young Japanese pilots volunteer to climb into bomb-laden planes and crash them into American ships. They call it Taco, we call it Kamikaze, and it is terrifyingly effective. At Leyte Gulf alone, Kamikazes sink or cripple more tonnage than the entire Japanese fleet managed in surface combat. Carriers like Essex, Intrepid, Franklin, they all take hits. Men burn alive on hangar decks. Magazines cook off. The fleet is winning the war, but the cost is climbing fast, and the admirals are scared. On the bridge of every carrier, the same question hangs in the humid air: how do you stop a man who wants to die? Paul Foster thinks he has the answer. Foster is 36 years old, enlisted back in 1927 because the Navy promised 3 square meals and he was tired of dust storms. He's a gunner's mate, which means he lives, breathes, and dreams 5-inch, 40mm, and 20mm guns. He knows muzzle velocity the way preachers know scripture. While other chiefs play acey-deucey in the goat locker, Foster sketches on napkins. He sketches a lot. His idea is simple on paper and insane in practice. Take the Navy's standard twin 40mm Bofors gun, rip it off its old mount, bolt it onto a brand new power-driven platform that can spin, tilt, and track faster than anything afloat. Then marry it to the brand new Mark 51 Director, a mechanical computer the size of a refrigerator that actually predicts where a diving plane will be 3 seconds from now. Give the gun crew Euro-stabilized sights so they can shoot straight even when the ship rolls 30 degrees. Load it with a new proximity-fused shell that doesn't have to hit the plane, just get close. The result: a curtain of automatic, radar-guided, computer-aimed hellfire that meets the Kamikaze a quarter mile out and tears him apart before he can line up his run. The Navy calls it the Mark 37 gun fire control system paired with the 40mm Mark II mount. Sailors just call it the Foster gun, even though the brass hates that name. The first time anyone sees it work is aboard USS Enterprise, the most fought-over ship in the fleet. Big E has already taken 3 Kamikaze hits in the past 6 months. Her crew is exhausted, angry, and running on coffee and hate. Paul Foster comes aboard in January 1945 with a team of civilian tech reps and a hold full of strange new gear. The old salts roll their eyes. Another wonder weapon that'll break the first time it rains. Foster doesn't argue. He just works. 18-hour days in the blazing sun, rewiring, recalibrating, teaching kids who were pumping gas in Ohio 6 months ago how to trust a machine that thinks faster than they do. He sleeps under the gun mount with a wrench in his hand. April 11, 1945, off Okinawa. The Kamikaze onslaught everyone has been dreading finally arrives. They come in waves. Hundreds of them. The sky is black with Zeros, Vals, Kates, even twin-engine Francis bombers loaded with 1,800 pounds of explosives. American fighters claw for altitude, Hellcats and Corsairs tearing holes in the formations, but there are too many. Dozens break through. The destroyer USS Laffey earns eternal glory that morning, taking 22 hits and surviving, barely. Nearby, the carrier Intrepid is not so lucky. A kamikaze slams into her deck, killing men Foster trained with. Enterprise is next in line. At 1,408 hours, the TBS crackles. Bogies, Angels 5, closing fast. Captain Grover Hall clears the flight deck and turns Big E into the wind to launch every fighter she has left. Paul Foster is at his battle station in the Mark 51 Director tub high above the island, headphones clamped on, eyes locked on the scope. The new mounts swing outboard on both sides, 8 twin 40s, 16 barrels hungry for targets. The first Zero comes in low and fast off the port quarter, skimming the wave tops. Foster's voice is calm over the phones. Target angle 220, range 2000 in closing, match pointers, on target, commence firing. 16 40mm guns open up as one. The noise is beyond description, like a giant ripping canvas mixed with a buzz saw. The proximity shells detonate in black puffs that blossom into fire. The Zero never has a chance. It flies straight into the wall and explodes 200 yards short, cartwheeling into the sea. The crew can't believe it. They whoop like it's the World Series. But there's no time to celebrate. Another kamikaze dives from 12 o'clock high. This one is smarter, jinking, rolling, determined. Foster's director tracks him clean. The guns elevate in perfect unison. The burst is short, almost polite, 5 rounds. The Zero's wing folds like paper. He spins in trailing smoke and fire, missing the island by less than 50 feet. One after another they come. Foster's guns knock down 6 confirmed kills that afternoon and assist on 4 more. Enterprise emerges without a scratch while ships all around her burn. Word spreads faster than radio. Every carrier captain wants the Foster gun. The Bureau of Ordnance can't produce them fast enough. Shipyards in Bremerton and Hunters Point work around the clock retrofitting Essex-class and Independence-class carriers. By the time the fleet sails for the Japanese home islands in July 1945, every fast carrier in Task Force 38 has at least 8 of the new mounts. Some have 12. The numbers tell the story the admirals can't ignore. Before Foster's system, a typical 40mm battery might hit 1 kamikaze in 10. After, 1 in 2. Sometimes better. The kill ratio flips overnight. American carriers stop dying. But it almost doesn't happen. Back in 1943, when Foster first submits his sketches, the Bureau of Ordnance laughs him out of the room. Too complicated. Too expensive. Stick to what works. Foster refuses to quit. He writes letters, corners admirals at cocktail parties, begs for a single test mount on a destroyer escort. They finally give him one old bucket, USS Abercrombie, just to shut him up. On her first war cruise, Abercrombie shoots down 11 Japanese planes in a single week using Foster's prototype. The Navy stops laughing. There's a letter Paul Foster writes home to his wife Dorothy in May 1945 that somehow survives. It's folded in a shoebox in the National Archives. He never mails it because he says it sounds too proud, but here's what he wrote. These boys are 19, 20 years old and they trust this crazy thing I built more than they trust their own eyes. Today we saved a lot of them. I keep thinking about our own boy, little Paul Jr., and how I hope he never has to see what these kids see. If this gun keeps even one carrier afloat long enough to bring her boys home, then every night I spent covered in grease instead of holding you was worth it. Tell Mom the wheat back home better grow tall this year because I plan on walking those fields again. Paul Foster never brags. After the war he goes back to Kansas, buys 40 acres outside Wichita, and raises wheat and 3 kids. He refuses interviews. When the Navy tries to give him the Legion of Merit, he asks them to give it to the gun crews instead. He dies in 1981, quietly, the way he lived. But in the summer of 1945, his invention is just getting started. The greatest test is still coming, the largest kamikaze assault in history, aimed straight at the heart of the Third Fleet. Over 1,000 suicide planes launch in the final desperate throw called Kikusui No. 10. If they break through, the invasion of Japan might have to be called off. And on the night of August 9, 1945, one American carrier finds herself alone, separated from the fleet in a typhoon, radar down, surrounded by kamikazes closing from every direction. Her name is USS Ticonderoga, and she carries 12 of Paul Foster's guns. If even one of those planes gets through, she's finished. And that's when a 19-year-old loader from Brooklyn does something that makes seasoned chiefs cry in the dark. The typhoon hits like God himself is trying to sink the fleet. August 9, 1945, and the Third Fleet is scattered across a black ocean that's trying to stand on end. 60-foot waves crash over the bows of the big carriers, wind screaming at 100 knots. Radar antennas are iced over or ripped clean off. Radio silence is total. Nobody knows where anybody is. USS Ticonderoga is alone. She's been steaming blind for 6 hours, her skipper, Captain Dixie Kiefer, the same man who brought the ship home after 2 kamikazes nearly gutted her off Formosa, fighting the wheel with everything the engineers can give him. Half the crew is seasick, the other half is praying. The new Foster guns are lashed down under tarps that are shredding in the gale. At 0347, the radar room picks up ghosts, faint returns that flicker and vanish. Then they come back stronger. Dozens of them. Closing at 200 knots. Japanese search planes have found Ticonderoga in the storm and radioed her position. The last great kamikaze wave, Kikusui-10, is turning toward one lone American carrier. Captain Kiefer makes the call nobody wants to make. He orders the ship to general quarters in a typhoon. Klaxons howl through the howling wind. Men stumble through knee-deep water on slanting decks, grabbing handrails slick with spray. The Foster mounts are uncovered by crews who can barely stand up. In Mount 51, port side forward, a 19-year-old third-class gunner's mate from Brooklyn named Vincent Maddie is the trainer on the left barrel. Vinny enlisted the day after Pearl Harbor because his older brother Tony took a 0 at Midway and never came home. He's 5'6", weighs maybe 130 pounds soaking wet, and right now he's scared out of his mind. But he locks himself into the shoulder braces of the Mark 51 Director and stares through the Eurosight like it's the only solid thing in the world. The first kamikaze comes out of the storm like a demon. A Judy dive bomber, running lights off, riding the updraft of a wave. Range, 800 yards and closing fast. The director-operator, Lieutenant J.G. Bob Rihanna, sings out, "Match pointers, on target, fire." Vinny's hands are numb on the controls, but the mount spins smooth as silk. The guns roar. Proximity shells burst in perfect brackets around the Judy. One wing shears off. The plane cartwheels into the sea not 100 yards off the port beam, the explosion lighting up the white water like daylight. The crew finds its rhythm. The Foster guns don't care about the storm. The gyros keep the barrels level when the ship rolls 40 degrees. The Mark 51 computers predict where the plane will be, not where it was. Shells reach out through the rain and find their marks. They come in ones and twos at first, then whole formations trying to overwhelm the single ship. A Kate torpedo bomber schemes the wave tops, drops its fish, and turns to ram. The torpedo porpoises past the stern. The Kate keeps coming. Vinny and his crew walk their fire right up the fuselage. The plane erupts in orange fire and falls apart, raining burning pieces across the flight deck that the wind sweeps away. By 0500 the sky is turning gray and the attacks keep coming. Ticonderoga's fighters are grounded by the storm. There's no help coming. Its 12 Foster mounts against the divine wind. And then the biggest one yet appears on the scope. A twin-engine Francis bomber, heavy with an 1,800-pound bomb load, diving straight out of the clouds at the island. If it hits, the bridge is gone, Captain Kiefer is gone, the ship is blind. Every gun that can bear opens up. Tracers converge. The Francis jinks hard left, then right, pilot wrestling the controls in the gale. Range drops to 400 yards. 300. Vincent Maddie has no business doing what he does next. The book says the director-operator calls the shots. But Vinny sees the Francis lining up and he doesn't wait. He overrides the system, cranks the elevation wheel by hand, and walks a solid stream of 40mm right into the cockpit. The canopy explodes. The Francis rolls over on its back, bomb still attached, and plunges straight down, hitting the water so close that the geyser of fire and seawater drenches the entire starboard side. Silence falls for maybe 10 seconds, broken only by the storm. Then the cheers start, raw, ragged, unbelievable. Men are hugging each other, crying, laughing, screaming Vincent Mattey's name like he just hit a grand slam in the bottom of the ninth. Ticonderoga survives the night without a single hit. Official tally: 19 confirmed kamikazes destroyed, 12 by the Foster guns alone. The rest are splashed by the 5-inch batteries riding the same directors. When the fleet finally reassembles 2 days later, Admiral Halsey himself comes aboard. He finds Vincent Mattey in the mess deck, eating beans out of a tin cup like nothing happened, and pins the Navy Cross on his grease-stained dungaree shirt right there between the coffee urn and the baked apples. But the war still isn't over. 6 days later, on August 15, 1945, Emperor Hirohito's voice crackles over Japanese radio. Japan surrenders. The greatest fleet ever assembled steams into Tokyo Bay under a sky that for once has no planes in it at all. And somewhere in that armada, Paul Foster stands on the forecastle of USS Enterprise, watching Mount Fuji rise out of the morning mist. A young ensign asks him if he ever thought his gun would make this much difference. Paul just shrugs, spits over the side, and says, "I just wanted the kids to come home." Vincent Mattey keeps the Navy Cross ribbon in a Prince Albert tobacco tin for the rest of his life. When his own son asks him years later what it was like, Vinny thinks for a long time and finally answers, "It was loud, kid. Real loud. And then one morning it got real quiet, and we all started breathing again." The Foster gun never gets the headlines. The carriers come home to parades, the Marines raise the flag on Iwo, the bombers get the credit for Hiroshima. But every sailor who served in the fast carrier task forces in 1945 knows the truth. When the kamikazes came, it was one quiet chief from Kansas and a bunch of scared kids from Brooklyn and Iowa and Texas who stood between them and 10,000 American boys who never had to die. Paul Foster goes back to his wheat. Vincent Mattey opens a little TV repair shop on Flatbush Avenue. The guns are scrapped for razor blades in the 50s. But if you walk the flight deck of the Intrepid Museum in New York today, look close at the twin 40mm mounts just forward of the island. The nameplates are long gone, but those are Foster guns. They still point at the sky like they're waiting for the next wave that never came. Because one American sailor refused to give up, the divine wind broke against a wall of American ingenuity and raw guts, and the road to Tokyo stayed open. And every carrier that steamed home under her own power in August 1945 carried a piece of Wichita, Kansas, welded to her side. But the story doesn't end there. Because 70 years later, a granddaughter cleaning out an attic finds a dusty box of letters addressed to someone named Dorothy, and what she reads inside changes everything we thought we knew about the man who saved the fleet. You're gonna want to hear this. Hit that next video right now.